Welcome to Section 31, episode number 365. I'm Dan Hammond.
And I am Rogue Schindler.
This week, we have triumphantly returned from GenCon with winnings. We won things, and it's been a long time since we had a show. So, I mean, we missed Comic-Con, we missed other stuff. Should we talk about GenCon since it's fresh on our mind?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, that sounds like a plan. We had originally planned to be on the same flight, but I had to go to do some business travel first. So we both arrived on Wednesday by a few hours apart. I arrived with Charlie, you arrived with Brian. But we went to the hotel within, I don't know, an hour or two of each other.
Yeah, it was pretty close, and we all managed to get in and get together and go to one of the probably 15, 16 years of going to GenCon in Indianapolis, or since GenCon has been in Indianapolis, going to a place really close by that has been around forever, and I never knew about it.
I honestly, when I was there last year, I met a customer, and they were local, so I said, hey, we're always looking for interesting places to try to eat because we go to the same place every time. Give me some suggestions. And they said the Yard House, which is a chain that we have here, Fogo Chow, which is expensive. But one of the things on this list was something called the Slippery Noodle, which I was kind of wary of, but everyone else seemed game to go. It was a few blocks away from the stadium, so it was a good 4-block walk or so, right? But most of it was inside, so it was air conditioned. That was nice.
Yeah, we only had to be out for about 2 blocks, and that was enough. But it was just enough to get us, it was close, so we could make that mostly air-conditioned walk, but just far enough away from like the main thoroughfares of GenCon that not a lot of people were overrunning it the way most of those main places in the mall and around the mall get. And it was great. It was so good that we went back, in fact. It was this cool...
Great. It wasn't overly busy, which, I mean, it was a weeknight, so I'm not too terribly surprised it wasn't Friday or Saturday. But the tables were big enough and they were clean enough to play on. So we had our first game of the weekend was a game of Star Realms, which is a Kickstarter backed a while back, and there was a big presence at the con. So we talk about that later. But that was fun. So we got a good start on that. That was great.
Yeah, and it was a cool, interesting building. The oldest bar in Indiana, established in 1850. That was their main claim to fame, but they had blues playing on a couple of stages. It was this big windy building, took up like almost 2 buildings as we were walking around outside, and different rooms had different tables set up. So we were just far enough away from the music that we could still hear it, but it wasn't overwhelming the way it is in places that usually have live music, which was great. The best of both worlds. We could sit and play and not be, have a speaker blasting in our ears and have to shout over each other.
And the server was fantastic and split our bill without us even asking. It was like, all right, here's more bill. Like,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was brilliant. We made our way back by cab, stopping at the Kroger for con supplies, water, things like that. That made the weekend a lot better. I got a flat of water and it was gone by the end of the week, so it was perfect. You guys got some soda and some other snackies, and that worked out really well. Got some Scooby snacks, some gummy candies, gummy snacks. That was perfect. And then we started the next day, bright and early, with the Star Realms sit and play, which I thought was going to be kind of a competition, but it turned out it was like, hey, come play our new thing and pay us, which was the thing that we had played the previous night. So that was kind of a bummer, but we were able to ask questions for the people who ostensibly knew what they were talking about, probably. And we had a couple of games, and they gave us a bunch of promos, and yeah, so that was fun. I enjoyed myself. It was a good start.
It was fun, yeah. Like you said, it was not what I expected. It was very much what we had done the night before. So there was not anything extra special about it. No competition or product. But we finished quickly enough and knew what we were doing that we got to play a couple of times and had a good time with that. So yeah, it was at least a very nice low key start to the first thing in the morning, first day of the con. So not too much pressure, and grew to appreciate not having to spend the entire con sitting right next to the overly loud video playing from the Blizzard booth, which had been imported, looked like whole cloth straight from Comic-Con. And it was interesting because it was clearly designed as a vendor floor booth, but Blizzard doesn't really usually come to Gen Con. So it was odd, and I get the feeling they didn't want to do anything different than what they already had as a booth-wise, so they probably hit up Gen Con, and Gen Con was like, yeah, we don't have that kind of space available for you and unless you want to be stuck in the card hall. And Gen Con, or Blizzard not knowing Gen Con, was like, oh, okay, sure. So they took their Comic-Con vendor floor booth and stuck it in the corner of the card hall.
It was,
They seem to be doing.
There were enough people wandering around there, but Hearthstone's a card game, kind of. So
yeah.
But had we been in the same tables that we had been in the past, we would have been right there, and so sick of that. Ooh, it was loud.
Yeah, it was loud. So luckily, that was over quickly. By the time we were done, we were definitely ready to move on. Our next game was at noon. So we luckily thought enough in advance. We were at one end of Gen Con, and it was at the other, quite literally. So we did plan ahead enough to stop and grab lunch on the way, and then made our way all the way down, not just into and onto the field at Lucas Oil Stadium, but to the far end of it, literally going corner to corner of Gen Con. But it was neat. I heard they had been doing stuff last year after the fact, and I was like, man, if I'd known that, I would have at least gone in to check it out, or maybe even played a game there. So I was definitely glad we had signed up for this Star Wars D20, not D20, sorry, Star Wars D6.
Old school.
OG West End Games, Star Wars, down on the floor of the field. They literally just took the field inside Lucas that the Indianapolis Colts play on, and put a bunch of tiles down over it and put tables up, and that's where the big game library was. That's where several RPG booths and tables had been set up to run their games, and it was really impressive.
And for what it was in the middle of the stadium, covered stadium, it was nicely well lit. The sound wasn't deafening. It was, since it was so wide open above our head, it wasn't, it was plenty quiet enough to hear what was going on your table. I mean, if there was somebody yelling, you'd hear it, but it wasn't overwhelming, so that was great. And going back in time, I've run a lot of Star Wars D6 games, so it was fun to be able to play in one. I don't think we had the most prepared game master. Would you say that?
No, I would not. I would agree with you. He was not prepared, or at least not interested in what, either not prepared or not really interested in being prepared. It was very much I am reading you this box text now, and what are you going to do? Okay, I am reading more box text triggered by your actions. I don't agree with this part, so we're going to move to the next page and do this.
But I mean, it was a pretty well written scenario, and we were more than half of the people at the table, the four of us in our group. So we were kind of able to still have a good time, I think, over the course of the few hours.
Yeah, we had the best antidote to poor GM is numbers, and we had 4 of the 7 players at the table, and so we at least had fun with ourselves.
Yeah, kind of driving the story where we thought it should go, and yeah, it was fine. We had I swear, Toy Darian and some other a failed Jedi, no, alien Jedi guy, and hey, but we were like mercenary guys and running around, kind of running the show. So that was fun. And we accomplished our goal. with a half hour to spare, so we had some extra time to wander around. Um,
Yep. They
and
had a nice. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say they had. You mentioned that they covered
Yeah.
the field over in tile. Well, in one particular section, they had like a grid of maybe 6 of those tiles pulled up, and it was the actual field, the field of play. So it was the artificial turf, and the squishy fake grass with the little rubber bits in it. So drag your feet in, the little bits go flying. It was great. So we got a big picture of us in front of a Gen Con sign on the actual field. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. And it was cool to see this giant sports icon completely decked out in gaming sponsors and a big giant Gen Con banner over the front window.
That's right. All
And
the jumbotron was like a slideshow of probably last year's Gen Con, just pictures of people playing games. As you said, all the ribbons that have displays, usually sponsors and things, were all Magic and Wizards of the Coast and all all these gamer stuff.
yeah.
Ultra Pro. That was great.
Yeah, that was nice. That was a cool detour, and I'm definitely glad we did that. But like you said, we finished that with time to spare. We had made reservations for a nice dinner, which was become sort of a tradition, usually the first night of Gen Con. And we had some time before that, so that gave us a chance to wander the floor a little bit on our way back to the room to get our first, dip your toe in and drop by the Paizo booth. And we kind of did a little scattering, like, what is everybody's top priority? Let's hit that first. So we didn't really do the thorough up and down, see everything there is to see, but we did kind of do some targeted shopping or exploring before dropping stuff off and going to dinner. So that was cool.
Yeah, there was some dice shopping. I wanted to hit the Kenzer booth, which was right there, so I got to chat with people there. But yeah, it wasn't as thorough as we have been in the past. And that'd be kind of the story of the whole. Every time we went to the floor was, all right, this is where we're going. We're going here, 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 here. That's about it.
Yeah. But we did have the very nice advantage of we had a little bit of a panic early in our Gen Con planning when the continuing committee room block was dissolved on the other end. But that did break us of the I guess restriction, or not a restriction, but we had to stay at the JW. That was where we got. That was what they were giving us, and it's not bad. It's right. It's fairly close as connected hotels go. But we did enter the regular lottery, and one of us was lucky enough to get in at a very early time slot. So we got the Marriott, not the JW Marriott, but the regular Marriott right across. And for a Trek player, that's like ideally suited, because you come across that bridge, you come down in the lobby, and you walk in right where the card game tables are, and that goes straight through into the back corner of the expanded part of the vendors floor. So, I mean, we really kind of had a lucky draw with that. So coming through that, we came up from the arena. We hit the opposite end of the vendor hall. We were able to zigzag around, come out the other end, stop by and say hi to the Trek folks, cut right through and into our hotel, drop our stuff off, and then go up the 2 blocks to dinner. So that was also kind of a theme of the weekend, was being able to zip over and pick stuff up or drop stuff off, and that worked out really well for us, I think.
Yeah, very lucky. Not everyone in our group was lucky enough to get anything close by. I know there was a lot of Ubers back and forth to the airport for other folks' rooms. So
yeah, and that also helped, so we could keep the other Trek stuff in our room, so it would be close and available to go pick that up as supplies were needed.
Yeah, we had a nice dinner. Unfortunately, the wait staff is incompetent and fed me some dairy, so that was unpleasant. Yeah, it's funny. When I was on the plane coming home, I got an email from Open Table, the reservation. It's like, how was your visit? Well, let me tell you. And so I went into great detail about the plight of myself, really. The rest of the weekend, not comfortable.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of disappointed with that they only took a little bit off that only took my drink off the tab instead of anything else. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. We'll see if we hear anything else from them as time goes on. I did mention that we've been going there for 10 years. That's tough.
It's
Anyway,
disappointing.
yeah, very disappointing. We wrapped that up and wandered
Speaking of
over
just
to, yeah, speaking of
disappointing,
disappointing, I'm looking at what we did. We're disappointed by the White Wizard Star Realms. I wasn't 100% disappointed by D6 Star Wars.
well,
It was fun, but it wasn't what it could have been. Dinner got poisoned, and then we went to what
and
I was
Thursday
hoping would be,
sucked.
yeah, well, what I was hoping would be, a fun time, which was something we've done locally, and at a con once, but was the Starship Bridge Simulator. Because there's four of us, that's like most of the bridge right there. It turned out to be 4 out of the 5 positions, but
Yep.
we did not go to the Artemis Bridge Simulator because we've done that before. We went to the other one, which was the
Epsilon,
Alpha
something like
Epsilon,
that.
something like that. Uh, I want to say it was the TOS to Artemis's TNG.
I would not say that.
And I'm not talking about stories or writing quality. I'm talking about technology level because
Yes. Oh
there
yeah,
was
Epsilon Bridge Simulator. That's correct.
the projector didn't have enough frame rate to keep the ship graphic going. We all had laptops with just a pen to adjust the screen, and it was not. I mean, there were some things I liked better than Artemis, but it was definitely a previous version. I felt like
Yeah.
without a lot of the flash and bling.
Even with just the technology of presenting it, the Artemis group seemed to be really up on it. Like the lag of the pen dragging the cursor around was problematic. And the, like you said, the screen. I rarely looked at the screen because it was so choppy. It wasn't helpful.
Well, and there was one other thing that was missing. I think I played engineering, which was fun to send crew around and fix things and keep power
Yeah.
levels. You were on science, so you were scanning things,
Science.
which was the little waveform thing that you showed us later was super interesting, but I understand how that would be super frustrating as
Yeah.
well.
It was cool. I actually liked that more than Artemis. I thought it was an interesting addition. It was mostly frustrating because there was no guidance. Like
Sure.
we told
Yeah.
them we had never played before, and we're like, your competition. You know
Yeah.
what Artemis can do. Tell us what the differences are. And they're like, oh, well, this is cooler. Just play it. Like,
So
okay, well,
Brian was on weapons, and he had a good time shooting things. Charlie
yep,
was flying the ship, had a joystick, and was moving the ship around. Great. We had another guy that had joined us for the last seat, and he was on communications. He was trying to jam other people and try to do, but there was no captain. There was no captain seat.
yeah, that was odd. And I noticed that we all kind of sort of defaulted to Charlie as the captain.
Well, he was
Because
at the end of the table.
He was at the end of the table, and he was
Yeah.
piloting, so he was already controlling the ship. That kind of feels like a commandy position in a smaller crew. So, yeah, but that was weird. There was no coordination aside from the very self-important volunteer who was not helpful other than how awesome he is.
So, and at the very end, it just said, we're playing around, we're going, blowing things up. We're going to go dock. All right, there's another bad guy over there. Let's go dock and power up. And all of a sudden, boom, mission failed. No warning, no,
Yep.
no indication that we were running out of time. Just, it's over. Get out.
Yeah. And our slot was supposed to go till 8 o'clock. So we were like, or 9 o'clock, whatever the hour was.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, we got 5 minutes left. He's like, in the hour, he's like, oh, no, it's a 45-minute. It's like, okay, when did you tell us that? Well, they're supposed to tell you that when you come in. I was like, okay, well, where does it say that on the clock? Where does it show us how much time we have left? Where is the person warning us that, we're almost out of time? Because we sat there for a couple of minutes working on our strategy for approaching the last couple of guys.
Yeah.
Enemy ships. And, if we'd known time was up, we could have charged in and just, guns blazing and try to knock it out before time ran out. but instead it was just like, all right, here we go, ready to engage, game over.
Yeah, exactly. Disappointing. I would not be. I would not object to doing Artemis next year. If we go back again, Artemis was one of the things that was in the stadium, so that was cool.
Yeah,
We saw some projectors and some touch screens and standard PC setups over there. So I would do that again, especially if we had another large group. You know,
yeah.
more than a few. But
And their setup was much better. Like the Epsilon was set at a just a standard table, a folding table, and it was like at a U shape. So the four of the five positions were facing inward at each other over their laptops and had to turn and look at the screen. If you ever wanted to do that, only the pilot at the end could look up and screen. The Artemis folks were set up like a bridge, and they had two different configurations. They had like one had like two rows where there was two in front and three in the back, but they were all pointed to the screen. And then there was another one where they were kind of in this sort of like up against a U-shaped console, like more of a gentle U with the screen in front of them, so they could all look up at it. And they were built into these sort of wood frames, so it was like they were computer consoles from a bridge. That was really impressive.
yeah,
It would have been interesting to try that out. So yeah, I agree.
We have to go back one thing, and that was at the restaurant while we were waiting. We played around a table, and I
That's
kept
right.
score on the tablecloth, which was just butcher paper. But I did cut it up, and it's important to me because I won.
Well, it was. So let's be clear. The nice steakhouse did not have butcher paper tablecloths. They had very fine white linen tablecloths, which they had then covered over with a piece of butcher paper so that the sloppy gamers would not come in and ruin their stuff.
Yes, exactly. They have to keep it safe. Keep the nice stuff safe from Gen Con gamers. That is correct. All right. We did the bridge simulator. We were all kind of, once again, disappointment. At least we had tribbles at the end of the day. Again, we had another round of tribbles. The 10 o'clock tribbles went off. We had Charlie ran it. We had we have two or three pools. We had a lot of people there for tribbles again. So that was a great time.
Yeah.
I think we elected to only. I think we had two. That's right. We had two pods of 6 or 7, and then we didn't do a second round. So it was just an hour of tribbles. We didn't do the full 2 hours because pretty much everyone was exhausted. So that was fun. We had a great time. Passed out some prizes, and pretty much called it a day. I don't think there was much we did after that, was there?
No, we went back and we discussed. We did get a minor, a low level bit of intel over tribbles about our main event for the next day.
That's right. So Herman
And
had a group to play in the ACG Open that we did really well and won last year. We were going to do it again this year. There were multiple signups for that first round, and we elected to not do it on Thursday because we had a ton of stuff to do. So we did Friday, kind of late morning, like 11 o'clock, which was much better than any of the 8 o'clock time slots that were.
definitely.
And they had already gone, so they were like, "Oh yeah, we had a great time," and we were ready to plug our ears. And Herman says something like, "Yeah, it was like 4 classes, and he just made a deck and played." Like, all right, well, that was nice. We didn't have to panic too much about playing random things that we've never seen before, like we have in the past years.
Yeah. So that was basically our topic of discussion before heading to bed. But it was not really very difficult knowing. I was like, oh, okay, well, we have at least these classes to choose from, and we're all familiar with them. So, we know who is going to play what if we do that. But we still had to know. We didn't know what tier we were playing, or if there were other options to be playing, what card pool was going to be. So that was all interesting to come in and find out the next day.
That's right. That was the first thing on our list. I don't think we did anything before that. Did we wander the floor or anything? That's right. We went and played. Right?
We were like, let's go in and play one just for fun. And after us agonizing back and forth about what we were going to play, and then finally making a decision, they changed our decision for us by giving us the wrong thing.
That's right. So we played some random scenario that we weren't expecting, with random characters that we had all brought. I still had a good time. And
yeah, of course.
It was my first game with this goblin character, so that was fun. Play around, and listen to get advice from Brian, who'd been playing it over and over again online. So that was fun. And I think we beat the scenario, but we didn't have enough time to really do anything else because the main event was coming up, the qualifier for the Pathfinder ACG Open.
That's right. And as was a not a big stretch of a prediction, but the common prediction, which was correct, was that it would be focused on the new Ultimate decks, which had come out in the past 6 months. Ultimate Combat, Ultimate Magic, Ultimate Intrigue, Ultimate Equipment, and Ultimate Wilderness, which is like days old at the moment, or at the time. So they had ostensibly classed decks that would go well with those. Unfortunately, they were restricted. Like, you had to use this class deck with this ultimate deck, and they gave you 5 choices. There was the fighter, the bard, the cleric, the rogue, and the druid. Unfortunately, they didn't really think that very thoroughly through, because the cleric that they provided is actually a very fighty cleric and doesn't really want ultimate magic, which is what they paired with it. The bard is actually a little more magic-y than they are ally-y, and would have really been better with magic rather than intrigue. And Valeros is a buddy guy. He actually wants to hang out with people. So, I mean, combat was not bad for you, but
No, it was okay.
intrigue would have been fine as well.
Yeah, I think if we had a choice, we would have certainly passed them around and split it up a little bit. But so in the end, though, Brian had played Kyra a lot, so that's what he played. My first character was Valeros, and I took him all the way through, tier 7 or whatever. So that's what I played. Charlie can't get enough Bard, so that's what he played. And you Rogue played the Rogue, right?
Yep, I had started to play that character in OP once before realizing that the deck is really poorly designed and dropping it. But I was at least familiar with, hey, look, if one of your 3 starting powers only has 1 card in the top 3 tiers, the front half of the game that you can use with it, that's poorly designed.
Yeah.
And the ultimate deck did nothing to help with that. But I was still familiar with the character and the ultimate deck that went with it, and I was actually pretty excited to use some of the new cards that I had not yet had the opportunity to use, and she did benefit greatly from that, basically turning Mauricio into a ninja.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to remember us staying together as a party and not going off on your own, but you just appeared at random times and took over things that other people didn't want to face. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was worth a card feat to take a spell, even though I could only play it once per game. To just bamf in. Materialize is a level 1 spell in Ultimate Equipment that is meant for the ninja, but it basically, anytime somebody encounters something, you can bamf in and encounter it instead. I think it's a Bane. It has to be a Bane. And if you happen to have the Rogue, Ninja, Assassin, or something, there's 4 class traits. If you have one of those traits, then you get to add 3 to it. So it's like bamf. And I was the barrier tastic master, and so most of the time it was to come in and rescue the fighters from a barrier, a trap, or something. Although I think I did rescue the bard from a fight once.
That worked out really well. By the end of the first game, since we were one of the last groups, I think the table runner was like, "Well, you guys did fantastic. You're pretty much definitely in for the next one." We scored pretty high. I think, did we get the high score that day? I think we surpassed everyone who had already gone.
We did get the high score that day, 190. We were like above second place, who was 50 above third place. So we were feeling pretty good.
We also had awesome luck in the first round and closed a bunch of locations because the henchmen were right on the top. But we really strategized well and used that to our advantage to really push for a high score, and we turned out really well. Yeah. So we'll take the luck and run with it. We pretty much sat in that ballroom, the Sagamore ballroom, for the rest of the day. I think I had walk around the con floor on my schedule, and yeah, we went and got lunch, fantastic lunch. But we sat in that room and played for hours. Uh-oh, Rogue is starting to break up.
Oh no!
All right, sounds like
Don't break me up. Yeah, so that made for a very pleasant experience for open, and that kind of got us going on the ACG bug. So we basically sat down and played that for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, you guys were going to do the special that night, right? Was that Friday night?
That's right, and we had been told by our very friendly GM and the person running all the ACG business that the interactive special took place between Adventures 1 and Adventures 2 of the least at GenCon that weekend. So we're like, well, if we're going to play that tonight, why don't we play through Adventure 1 so that we'll be in the right place story-wise when we play the interactive tonight, or at least part of it. And
Yeah. So that was fun to just burn through as many as we could. I didn't think we were going to get through all four or all five. Did we redo the first one?
well, we did. Yeah, we didn't do the first one.
Yeah.
That was actually a different season that we started with before the
I
open.
managed to pack in 5 scenarios before time was up, and we had to go and do other things.
Yeah.
That was amazing. So we played a lot of ACG. That was great. You guys went off. Did we went off for dinner? That's right. We went off and got dinner at
Yeah.
at the food court, and then you guys went off to the special, and I went off to run Tribbles.
Correct. So how
Yeah.
did Tribbles go?
Tribbles was great. I taught people how to play and lost pretty badly, but you know, no, it was fun. We had another big two pods worth of people. We played around and then called it a night. But it was fun. I gave out a play mat, and there were just a ton of people who came, and not only come that day, but there were people who came back throughout the weekend. You know, that learned how to play and then came
fantastic.
back. So that was great. Yeah.
I did hear that a lot. I heard at least a couple of times, like, oh, look at you. You did well, and you only learned to play yesterday. And it was a different person each time. So that's cool.
Yeah.
More people.
So during the day, all of the Trek events that were going on there, the sealed events and the masters, everyone, all the events took place, sold out. You know, they had maximum capacity for all the sealed events, and there were a ton of people coming to play, learning to play. People who don't come to go to regular tournaments throughout the year, but they come and do a sealed deck or a draft at Gen Con. They were back again. So having a good time. And it's great to see those fill up every year. But that was the end of Friday. You guys came back.
That was the end of your Friday.
Right. So I went back to the room for about an hour and lay down, still not feeling well. But I came back down and ran Tribbles from 10 to 11, 11:30, and then went back to the room and crashed. Meanwhile, you guys were playing the special, which was...
Yes. We started the special at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or it was scheduled to start at 8 o'clock, and we got back to the room at like almost 1:15. And it's notorious for being lengthy. And yet it was still not long enough, at least not for us. So if you're not familiar with the role-playing specials, interactive specials that they have done, I know D&D does them, Pathfinder does them, but the concept is in general is that you are in a big room. If you've ever been in the Sagamore Ballroom, it's a huge open ballroom. They have lots of round tables. That's where the Pathfinder has taken that over from D&D in the recent years. They run all their RPGs in there. But in this case, everybody is there playing the same game at the same time, and not just playing the same, like I'm playing a copy of a game and you're playing a copy of a game, but we are all in the same world, in the same universe happening simultaneously, and some big group activity is happening that requires lots and lots of adventurers to participate, and there are usually a number of tasks that need to be done, and so your table has to choose between, like, say, 3 tasks. When I did the D&D one a couple of years ago, it was a dragon has been seen threatening this keep that and has said that they're going to come at sundown, and so we need supplies from the forest to build siege, defense weapons, and we need to shore up the wall defenses, and we need to do this, and so your team decides which one you want to do, and they signal when you complete tasks, so we see how many tables have completed which tasks, and that gives you bonuses to subsequent rounds for accomplishing other things. And in recent years, and by recent I mean last year, maybe the year before, but they have added an ACG component to that for Pathfinder. So, not really knowing what to expect, how they were going to wrap that in, we're like, okay, I'm going to go in. We'll probably play 1 or 2 longish games that will be ancillary, but still get to get in. Entire adventure, 5 scenarios possible to complete in that one evening event. Just like that, we had played the adventure. They're talking about this magical tapestry that has actually a portal into a demi realm, and the tapestry has begun unraveling, and they don't know why. So we have to go in and find out. And there are 3 different groups that we can go, tasks that we can do. Oh, there's a storm, and we had done a lot of storm stuff, so we did that. But there are these pirates coming in and trying to enslave some of the inhabitants, and there are these people over here who have gone missing. We need to find out what happened to them. Maybe they have intel on the tapestry. So you pick one, they set up the scenario, and we played it. And then it turned out when we finished that, they're like, okay, which of the other 2 would you like to do? And we're like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And you actually had the opportunity to do all 3. By the time we were setting up for the 3rd one, I guess time in the overall interactive had advanced far enough that some event had triggered, and so that first phase of those 3 tasks was over. We didn't get to finish that. In fact, we didn't even get to start it. We barely got set up. And like, oh, this has happened, and so now all of these things happen, and he starts setting up another scenario that was different. So we had to advance because of the time, and it was really interesting. We got lucky with our 4th. Since you went to do tribbles, we had an open seat, and we had heard legends, tales of a mighty player who had come into the open by herself and played all 4 characters and still managed to qualify for the semifinals in the past 2 days. And she ended up being our 4th at our table, and she was fantastic. Like,
that was quite fortuitous.
Yeah, she had never played OP before, but she was very excited about doing it. She played through several boxes by herself at home, but didn't really have a lot of people to play with. And so, yeah, she was playing a character I had played through all the way, and was like, what she brought 3 different characters so that she could fit into whatever group she got assigned to well, which was great forethought. And we're like, well, that is probably redundant. Bgress one is fantastic, and I think you'd have a lot of fun with it if you like doing these things, and I detailed it. In fact, it's one of the characters you were interested in, or an archetype you were interested in. And it was fantastic. We ended up getting along really well, and we got through pretty well some of the adventures, but in the end, there was an inherent problem logistically with trying to integrate the ACG into the way they run the RPG aspect of that type of game, which is, you never know when these events are going to get triggered, or, when you're cooperating with 60, 70, 100 other tables, if you're going to get to a certain threshold and, okay, we don't need to do this part of it anymore. And if you're a GM at an RPG table, you can be like, okay, all of these people turn and start running array, and you receive word that your help is needed elsewhere, and you're like, okay, it's really easy to, shift on the fly and say, okay, now you're going to go do this. Whereas At the ACG table, it was like, oh, you didn't finish the scenario that we were on. You get no credit for that, and now we have to stop and completely clean that up and set up a brand new scenario before your time can continue working on what you're doing. So that part was a bit frustrating. We definitely hit a couple of those walls where in that penultimate scenario where we jumped to, we had gotten all set up and we're about to win, and he was like, oh, that's the horn. That's it. You're done. And we were like, we're literally about to finish. And it's like, whose turn is it? You get to play through that person's turn. And it was like, well, you have 2 explorers left, and you need to acquire an ally to close the last location. And he kind of looked through the deck and was like, yeah, you might squeak it out. And you needed like 3 explorers. Could easily do that the next turn, whatever. So he was just like, slide this 1 card from the top to the bottom. It's like, well, why don't you go ahead and explore? And, Charlie was able to acquire the ally, and that was next, and face the henchman and close. But it was like, that is exactly the type of, logistical wiggle room you have as a GM at an RPG table that is really difficult to incorporate at the card game table. So we appreciated that, it's like, we're done. We've won. We just, a timer went off we didn't know existed. So that was helpful. We swept that over and went to start the next one. Our GM was not all great, however, because he's like, oh my God, I have to set up 6 locations for this one? Like, dude, really? Like, you spent most of the evening on your phone anyway, and we had to ask you 3 times when we needed random cards from the box. I don't feel like setting up 6 scenarios or 6 locations is a big ask while we're trying to figure out what 2 cards we get to take from our treasure. But okay. Charlie, of course, being Charlie, was like, all right, give me the locations, and he just started setting it up for him. And the guy didn't even help. Like, it would have been done faster if the 2 of them would work together, but that part was a little frustrating. In the end, a similar thing happened where things were escalating quickly. We got to the end. We knew where the villain was. We had closed enough locations to get into position to corner and defeat, and time ran out.
That's kind of
like, all right, yeah. All right, Pathfinders, you have succeeded. Now everybody leave the tapestry and go home so we can all clean up the ballroom and get ready for the 2 a.m. RPG slot. And we're like, really? We literally need, first it was early. It was 2:30 or 12:30, and we're supposed to go till 1. And also, we didn't need 30 more minutes. We needed 5 more minutes. So he was like, oh, look, you've done it. Congratulations. And so that at least got us through an entire 4th scenario. So we got the card feat for, doing a 4th scenario for tier rewards, and we got enough tier rewards to tier up and get the adventure reward. So that ended up being nice. It was hot or cold on the GM front, but in the end, he at least made up for dragging his feet by, granting us, yeah, you guys would have won. We can see that. So I would like to do it again. There's certainly some logistical issues we discussed afterwards. Apparently Brian's really interested in playing the RPG aspect of it, which I could see would be interesting if you have never done it before. But I would really like to see them, how they can make adjustments and give card game GMs a little more latitude to do that sort of thing, so that you're not completely screwed by the logistics of trying to mesh those 2 aspects. But on the whole, I had a really good time. I really liked playing that character. We played that same character that we had played already, and by the end of the night, I think we had said we did 11 scenarios in one day.
That's a big number. Yeah, that's at least an hour each.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that definitely made for a late evening, especially after the open and a whole adventure before that. So we were definitely wired, and then definitely crashed really hard when we got back to the room.
Well, I think I woke up minimally when you guys came back, but I was passed out too hard. I crashed again, so I didn't even get a chance to wake up and ask how it went till the next day. Uh, the next day, the next day was our semifinal for the ACG Open. I think we had a mid-morning slot, right? We didn't want the
Yeah,
super early one.
yeah, we had specifically requested to work around our schedule the 11 o'clock slot,
Right.
and given our seating, I guess, or our placement, they were, they were nice and accommodated us first. Um, and given the previous evening's events, there was no pre gaming that day.
No.
we we rested up right up until our 11 o'clock slot.
Yeah, we didn't even
Um,
leave and go to the floor early very much. I think maybe wandered through or something, but it was just a straight shot over there, and we sat down and just got to work, right?
yeah, we had. So the first one was rough. At least it felt tense because for every closed location,
Right.
checks to defeat increased by one per closed location,
So
and
as
there were
yeah,
eight, not
eight.
six, the way there
Yeah.
should be for 4 players.
So as the game went on, it got progressively harder and harder and harder.
Yeah,
But the second scenario with in the semifinals was just kind of a straight up. There's a monster. You should close this site and get a bonus, but for the most part, just corner them and then you win. And there were no
yeah,
real big surprises. I didn't think.
yeah. The only extra hiccup was after you drew your opening hand, everybody had to peel off the top 4 cards of their deck,
Right.
and those got stolen by the scenario and put in an extra location that got built after we closed one of the particular locations. But that really, we were already at 3 card feats, so that took us to 18. Losing 4 cards brought us down to 14, which is only one under starting. I never really felt the absence of those cards. I guess if you really lost some key cards, it would be rough.
Well, we
I
got to
think
draw
Brian
our
said
opening
one of
hand,
us.
so everyone at least
Yeah,
had one of their favorite card types, so it wasn't devastating.
uh,
Uh, and we had just played that scenario where almost the exact same thing happened in a
yeah,
different game, and it felt like that was much worse because in that game, if you don't recover your stuff, you lose it. Whereas in this, it was like, yeah, all right, we'll just remake the characters. It wasn't a continuing on thing, so I didn't feel nearly as uh, devastated by the potential losing cards, right?
yeah, exactly. And we dove right in and hit that first scenario or the first location. There was a particular location thematically that had to be closed before the subsequent one would be created, and we found it right away. Uh, and then you had to stealth 12 or combat 30
30, something like that. Yeah.
uh, to disappear it and spread to the wind. So we did that without a trouble. And yeah, I mean, oddly, that one seemed like the easiest for us, and that was the only one we didn't get the top score in.
That's right.
The only round.
We were ousted by 2 points by another group, the Drunken Gamers. Was their group name apparently. They beat us by 2 points. So I don't know if that meant they got to choose when they played in the final on Sunday, but we still got our first choice. But the rest of the day was kind of waiting to hear because we weren't the last group this time. There were still 2 other groups after us, 2 other time slots after us, each with 2 teams available to play. So we felt kind of good because when we finished, half the teams were done, and we figured we had the high score, all the other teams would have had to beat our score to push us out of the finals. So, but we didn't know until late in the evening.
Yeah, in fact, we were coming back from our last event, our True Dungeon experience, when we finally got the text that alerted us to, congratulations, you made it to the final round. We'll see you at 11 o'clock tomorrow. So, or 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah. So after we were done, did we sit down and do another round of another game there? I'm kind of
We we
fuzzy.
played one we played one more because we had our lunch pickup, and
That's right.
it was an easy way to have a location to sit at a table and eat, and also play while we did it. So since we had asked for Season of the Goblins Friday morning and they did not give it to us, we had made Goblin decks to play together. We're like, okay, for realsies, we're gonna play with some goblins, and we went and picked up had the Ruth's Chris steak break both days, which was delicious, and they were very helpful in getting us dairy-free orders,
Super
so that
accommodating. Yeah.
you were not poisoned, and so the manager was really helpful with that. So, and it's just down the block, and we're at that corner of the convention center. Sagamore is right on that northeast corner, so it was really easy to just have two of us went and picked up the food, and two of us set up a scenario. We came back, we ate and played, and then we hit the floor, I believe.
Yeah, I think we hit the floor for a little bit. Looking around to I think we just wandered. I don't know that I had any directive at that point, but we had another appointment for the World War Hulk win-a-box, which was
Sure.
the legendary tournament. That was interesting. So the World War Hulk was an expansion for Legendary that, if I'm not mistaken, was available for purchase earlier in the con, but by that time it sold out, right?
Correct.
All right. So if you had bought a ticket to this event, and the four of us all bought tickets, one person, and we never really heard if you have to beat the scenario or not, or to beat the game or not, but the person with the highest score at the end wins the box that you're not necessarily the box you're playing with, but a sealed copy of the box. So a not available at the time box. So that was kind of cool. We figured there's 5 seats. There's 4 of us. Our odds were pretty good, especially when we sat down and there was no one else there.
Yeah. They're like, oh, is it only 4 players? Like, no, it's 5. We'll just wait and see if somebody comes. We're like, all right. But yeah, I had assumed we would have to at least win, because the rules are like you don't win. The player with the highest score wins if you defeat this scenario. But it was basically, hey judge, we're done. This guy won. Okay, here's a box. Bye. Get out so we can reset. So I don't think they would have even cared if we had finished or not. They were expecting to give away a box per table. So
yeah. So a fifth did show up eventually, and he knew all the cards. Well, he didn't know all the cards, but he knew the game mechanics. Through conversation, we learned that he had played all the previous versions, the Serenity version and the Firefly version, the Buffy version, all the things that we had played before. So we figured, at least in my head, was like, all right, well, this guy's got as much of a chance to win as the rest of us do. So
we should make sure that doesn't happen.
We should make sure that doesn't happen. And as soon as I sat down, I was like, all right, I was talking to Charlie, and I'm like, all right, we're going to make sure Rogue wins, right? Because you got all the other legendary boxes, and I figured, I certainly don't want it. It's just an expansion for a set that I don't have. But when this guy sat down, I was like, okay, well, there were numerous opportunities. I don't want to say to hose the guy, but we certainly didn't tee anything up for him.
We did not assist.
We didn't have any discussions about what cards we shouldn't buy so that other of us can get them when his turn was up. Yeah, I think the quote was, "Oh, you guys all know each other," and I think he kind of figured that his odds were slim at that point.
Yeah. And it's not like we actively went out of the way to hose it, because him, but he did at one point, like, I guess he had been buying all of a certain card, and we got hosed fairly early. It was not looking good because if you're not familiar with the game, you have 5 cards you can purchase in the HQ, and you only get to replace one when somebody buys something. And each of the heroes in the deck has one, like the ultra rare, high cost, really good copy of a person, which is awesome if you can get them. But early game, it's almost impossible to buy a 7 or 8 cost card when you you only have 8 in your deck and you can never draw them at the same time. So they were taking up spots in the purchase area that we couldn't refill quickly, and it was rough. So as soon as somebody could buy something, I think Charlie picked up one of those expensive cards, and I guess that was the person that he had been buying all of the cards for. That was his color.
Yeah.
He didn't really share that information until after the fact.
Yeah, it went around like twice before he realized, oh, someone bought the guy I was looking for him. Charlie's like, yeah, but like 2 turns ago. And
oh, well, I had bought all of that guy, and that would have really helped me. But I guess you got that. I guess we needed that spot. That guy's gone though. That was the color I had. Man, he would be really helpful right now. But I guess he's not out. Because that's what all of my other deck cards are. My deck cards are that guy. Is he gone? Did somebody get that? Oh, he's gone, huh?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That was around the time when I stopped feeling sorry for him.
Yeah. It was I thought a very interesting mechanic that this game had set up between the cards evolving and going on a play and getting new ones if you meet certain requirements, and the villain with it. You had to blow up the helicopters before you could fight the bad guy, and then he flipped over and he was crazy, much stronger, but you didn't have to fight the helicopter. There was a lot of very intricate things I really liked about the game. It as some background, we played Legendary. How many times do you think I've played Legendary? Maybe dozens.
Yeah, dozens.
I've never even gotten second place in a game.
Really?
No, I'm terrible at this game. Terrible at this game. The fact that somehow I won is absolutely ridiculous. I think did I edge out you by a point or something like that?
Yep, 1 point.
Yeah, so by the end, I hit the bad guy a few times, got a bunch of points. I edged out. I made sure that the guy around the corner couldn't hit the bad guy by leaving some obstacles in his way until clearing them all out. And I got 1 more point than everyone else, so I ended up winning the box. So I didn't want it, so I gave it to you. So did my game make it back to San Diego? Okay.
It did, and it's right here, and I have sleeves that are due to be delivered tomorrow, so I can pack it all up and restore my complete collection of all the Legendary. So that's nice, and I'm glad I ended up not buying it. It was funny because they did have, I guess not complete collection now, but they had the other new product they had this year was they released a semi re-release of the original set called Marvel Studios Phase 1 10-year anniversary edition. It was like the gold box, and it was exactly what we wanted the original game to be when we first got it, which is all of the art is replaced by movie stills. It's all from the
comic book art.
Yeah, and we're like, wow, this is fan. This is exactly what we want to do. And I talked over and over again with the demo guy because I wanted to see how much of the game was new. And it turns out there are some new villains, new henchmen, new schemes. So it is new gameplay in the box, and then all of the original Avengers and Nick Fury with new art. But he was like, in the process of talking to him about that, he was like, hey, dude, you should really. And he was looking around, and I guess they didn't have World War Hulk set up to demo anymore because they had to sell their demo copy because they had sold out so quickly. And he's like, if you haven't played that, if you should get a copy of that. I don't like Hulk from the comics or in the game in general, but that is the best expansion we've ever had. That was the most fun I've had playing this game in a long, long time. And I was like, that's a little bit of a downer from the Legendary demoer, but I get where you're going with that, and that sounds really interesting. So we have that was probably about an hour before our game. I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'll hold off and wait, and if we win that, then we'll have that. Or if on the off chance we don't win that, maybe I can buy a copy, which turned out you couldn't. But good praise, and I really enjoyed that game. So I'm glad we got a copy and we can add it to.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come out on a Friday night sometime.
Definitely.
So after that, we had a brief break, so we grabbed a quick bite at the food court again,
Yeah.
and then it was off to our second try, trying to get Charlie to have a good time at True Dungeon because we kept talking it up, and last year was
Yeah.
just terrible puzzles and not a good time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and we were indifferent to doing it again.
yeah,
I would have been fine skipping, but amongst our group, we had and part of the reason I came this year, our friend Brian, who we've been trying to get to come for years, was finally up for joining us and came out for his first GenCon ever, which really was like, oh, I totally want to vicariously experience this with you. And he was interested in True Dungeon, so it was actually kind of fortuitous. This is the first year they did that sealed deck, so people couldn't bring in their mountains of tokens and be like, okay, all right, you paltry noobs or casual people who don't have, elite equipment, here are the things I will grace you with, or I'll just sit here with my stuff and look down on you and let you flounder or whatever. It was like, no, everybody gets this stack, and that's all we have. And it's obviously inherently meant to be a beginner game to get people to come in and do it. So it seemed like a great place to start, and it seemed like a good place that maybe would not be as bad of an experience for somebody like Charlie who had the one and only bad experience last year. And that's largely how it started out. Would you agree?
I'd say so. There was a room. Well, everyone else in our group was also new. So you and I were the only people who had, and Charlie were the only one who had ever done this True Dungeon thing before. So we were helping them get set up with tokens and trading the limited tokens that we had. We were trading, helping them choose characters, right? And we kind of got ushered into that first room, and we were kind of left really on our own. For as newbie as everyone was, the instruction that we got was remarkably lax and limited. I think I ended up explaining to the casters how casting works, and these are the things you have to memorize, and this is kind of how it's going to go during a combat. I think Charlie did a good job of talking to the fighters and saying, okay, you slide your puck and you get out of the way so the next person can, because it's all about cycling through as fast as you can to do a lot of damage. You helped out the cleric to figure out what the beads were and kind of get her past the overwhelmingness nature of that to begin with. And Brian was off, testing his rogue, the operation game. But I don't feel like we got a lot of instruction there.
No, it very much felt like, and you think they would know when they're coming in, this is a beginner group, they should get some better instruction, but their trainers are so probably have gotten, I guess, lax, or just they're so used to people coming in and knowing what they're doing that they're just like, yep, here, come in, True Dungeon, go.
Yeah,
you do this, right? Okay, you know what you're doing, go ahead. And and that guy came by twice, not knowing we were a beginner group. I get that it's a new concept. Like, this is the first year they've done it, that sealed, and they were still probably getting their shit together. But it was Saturday night, so you think they would have had this, like when we checked in at the front desk and they gave us our pucks. We're like, okay, don't open these until your coach tells you to. And we sat there and we very patiently, obediently didn't open them. And the coach comes in and is like, okay, you've got stuff, and here's doing this. And like, you guys should really assign your things. Like, well, they told us not to open them until you told us to. Oh, well, that's new. You should have had open these and started looking them already. So there was a lot of contradictions, and it seems like they're still shaking the bugs out of, just catering to the power gamers that are super regular. But the first, aside from one of the noobs immediately coming in and picking up the prop that had been laid out on very specific pattern tiles that we were supposed to follow.
Yeah.
That could have been all right. I don't know if there was enough time to solve that the way they think it was supposed to be solved. I mean, we kind of brute forced, got the beginning of it, and then trial and errored theories and got through. But like, it took us that long to get one shape, and they wanted us to spell out 4 more. to
Yeah.
get a whole word before there's a pattern of tiles on the floor that all had different symbols. If you used the rope that was out there to go from you ignored the rest of the symbols but used the ones that had numbers on them to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it would spell out a letter. And there were multiple numbers like that used different symbols. So there was 1 dot and then 2 dots and then 3 dots and then 4 dots. There's 1 triangle, 2 triangle, 3 triangles. And apparently if you did them all, eventually it spelled the word. We got S. And we're like, okay, it's an S. What does S stand for? I was like, well, S could be 3 of those 6 possibilities on the pillar. Yep. So I guess we'll just try some. And that was kind of how it went.
That was a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Second was a combat. Right?
Yeah.
The snake gods who didn't think I was quite evil enough to bow before them.
That's right. It turned out to be robot snakes, which was kind of irrelevant, I think.
Right. Well, it just meant we couldn't crit on them, which kind of sucked, considering we discovered that by landing a crit.
Why would you do that to new players? I mean, why would you take away the excitement of getting a 20?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I mean, that was, again, this is based on an existing, number of years ago run that was very popular, apparently. So they changed some of the things, but that seems like something you would change for new players.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't crit.
I was hanging out with the casters, because I was playing the wizard, and the guy who was playing the wizard was just getting them all right, so that was great. The druid was naming the leaves, and the cleric was naming the beads. So everything was going well. I think the combat went pretty well. We eventually destroyed the robot snake thing, and we're able to pass through. Was the next room the room with the columns?
I think so. At some point, we had 2 combats in a row, which was weird. But yeah, I think the next one was the room with the columns. And we kind of had differences of opinion on that one. I actually really like that room, even though we didn't solve it. I just felt like there was nothing there. I still want to know what the final solution was. There were
Go ahead. 5 columns in the middle of the room, each with 4 sides, and on each side was a letter. At the 4 corners of the room, there was an arrow pointing toward the center. So if you arrange the columns such that they were diagonal to the rest of the room, anyone who was standing on one of those arrows and looking at it could read one of the sides. So you could read all sides at once. So you could read 4 words. And all the columns rotated, so you could turn them until you spelled something. We spent the whole 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, felt like an hour.
Yeah, felt like a long
trying
time
to figure out any one word, and we just couldn't come up with anything.
And the biggest gripe about that was that it was just straight brute force, which for a word scramble puzzle, I wouldn't mind if I was sitting with some paper and just had an infinite time. But for a timed in-person moving stuff around puzzle, like almost all of the other rooms had something on the wall, like some kind of inscription or some kind of clue, hint towards solving it. The only thing in this room told us what we had already figured out, which was you needed to have someone stand in each corner of the room to read things each direction. There was no clue about how to start or what any of the words should have said, unless those animals at the end were supposed to do that, in which case I still don't know what that meant. Because I felt like we're decent puzzle solvers, and when we knew what we had to do, all we had to do was figure out the letter. We were working on 2 angles at a time, just to like, okay, it has to be this or this. So we have these 2 options, and none of those options made words with the rest of the letters, and we just ran out of time.
The only thing I can think of was maybe it wasn't 4 different words. Maybe it was something that wrapped around, and the reason we couldn't figure out how to start a word is because it was the middle of a word, and we were just not seeing it. But yeah, I mean, had we had and the columns were not put together well. They were hard to spin in place.
Yeah,
Uh,
which made it take longer.
Made it take longer. There were seven of us, nine of us wandering around. Everyone, and it's not something that you need more than. If we would have had, let's say, six people, right? Uh, one person in each corner, and then one person working on each side of the thing, trying rotating it, trying to find something.
Yeah.
But there were an additional three people wandering around, turning things around, trying to figure things out, and just getting in the way. And it was not. It was tough. I
And yeah, and that seems to be the theme for True Dungeon for me is that you have probably 30 to 40% more people than you need to do things, and you're just tripping over each other.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
there's no way to get that many people working on the same page at the same time in a timed fashion in a room like that. And you end up working at either op- independently or at cross purposes.
Yeah, I
And
think a good
and that's
example of
frustrating.
that is the last year when we had that room with the mirrors and all the hexes and everything had to bounce around through all the different things. We
Yeah.
we had one group who had a pretty good idea of what they were doing, setting things up working one way, and another group working the other way, and it was one group had to stop and stand in the back, and that just frustrated the people who thought they could be helpful and just weren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, we had another combat where there was a undead something or other, and the undead kept coming, and then the bard acknowledged, which was that you that figured out that
Yep.
there was a phylactery or something. We had to kill the altar, which was
That's
another
right.
thing there, and we had to do
Yeah.
damage to that. And meanwhile, the monsters kept coming, and we kept blasting them and not doing enough damage. And eventually, we got to the end, and I think everyone survived, but we were really starting to hurt by then.
Yeah. And then we had another combat right away, which was my lady's bedchamber, which was a little creepy. Um, and it was a Medusa-like creature, and you kind of saw the silhouette coming out, but it was like the GM was introducing her, and it was like, "Oh, don't look, don't look, don't look!" And then if you happen to have looked, you literally just got turned to stone.
Yeah, I think they got a roll because I think
You
three
know?
people went over there to roll to see if they were turned to stone, and
Yeah.
our dwarf fighter, the one who was supposed to be doing all the damage, was turned to stone and had to go stand over there for the whole 10 minutes and not doing anything.
And at the beginning of this, because it was a beginner game, they did give us the option of, we've got two levels you can do. You can play on normal difficulty, where things are normal, because that's what we usually do, or we can do non-lethal. So if you do get killed in a room, you can sit out that room, but then at the beginning of the next room, you come back and you're resurrected, so you can continue participating. We're like, okay, all these people who joined us have never done it before. Brian's never done it before. This is Charlie's second time. Let's do non-lethal. That's fine. I don't care. We get less XP. Who cares? Hooty hoo. And like, I get it thematically, role playing wise, but then the dwarf was like, that the GM was like, you can come back and be resurrected at one hit point in the next room, or you can follow your party around as a ghost, and you are permanently dead. We will keep your statue here, and you can follow them as a spirit. And he was like, that sounds cool. I'll do that. And we're like,
I mean, really?
really?
That's what you want to
Really?
do? All right. Uh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I,
But that brings us to what I felt was the easiest puzzle of the night. And
uh,
we got it right away.
yeah. So we walked into the room and there is a big table. It's a bigger room. There's a big table in the middle, and it's full of sand, and there's a projector from above. And immediately my thought was, this is one of those really cool things where if you change the elevation of the sand, the projector above notices the change in height and it changes the color, which is a really cool thing. You see people play with that, in videos and things. All I want to do was start playing in the sand and watch the elevation change and the colors change. Turns out that had nothing to do with the actual puzzle. Uh,
Which,
Garbage.
given what they were asking us to do, could have. I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool.
Yeah.
But basically, there was an inscription on the wall, there were runes on the pillars, and it literally translated to carve these into the sand and then fill them with blood.
Yeah, right. And there was a big dagger right in the middle of plastic dagger, right in the middle of the sand.
So that translated to either carve the runes in the sand and then fill it with blood, or carve a rune, blood, carve a rune, blood. And so just to test it out, Charlie he's got the most hit points at the time. He pulls out the dagger, he carves one of them, and then he pricks his finger with the thing and he holds it over there. And the GM says, nothing happens. So we proceed to spend all of our time very frustratingly doing things, including Charlie doing all of them and then cutting his hand and you have succeeded at failing, our very obnoxious GM says. And he probably once every 90 seconds said, read the words exactly as they are written on the wall. And killed Charlie with the damage and just really kept grinding as we tried different things. And finally, at the very end, he says, all you had to do was do one rune and fill it with blood. And like, that's exactly what we did at the beginning. He's like, no, you did this. It's like, just slicing your finger is not going to give enough blood to fill it up. Or it's like, not going to give any blood. And we're like, really? That's ridiculously pedantic. B, if that's what it is, you are our source of information. You need to tell us that. It's like, oh, you slice your finger and hold it over, but only a few drops fall in, and it doesn't, and it doesn't happen. Nothing happens. If we needed more blood, or slicing your finger doesn't draw blood, which, dude, I'm about to pull out a knife and show you how slicing a finger draws blood. On top of that, Charlie, who was understandably frustrated, kind of lit into him because he was being, I believe the exact phrase was, you, sir, are pedantic and a little bit of an ass.
Yes, that was probably the quote of the night. You, sir, are pedantic and a little bit of an ass.
And Charles like, I would like to know your name, sir, because he wanted to go and the guy wouldn't tell him. And then he very spitefully turns around. Oh, really? Well, you're dead, and everybody takes 6 damage. And I'm like, and I don't know how you don't interpret that as a spite act.
Yeah.
On the part of a GM. And we had several discussions about, it's Saturday, these guys run all weekend and are really tired. It's like, you know what? That's bullshit. If you can't handle working those hours and being an impartial GM and not being a dick to new players, then you shouldn't be in here. That's not an excuse.
After everything we went through last year and how poor we felt the puzzles were, and then how much fun I had at Origins and how much fun those puzzles were to go through, this was such a downer, because that could have been the best room with, the best puzzle, the most interactive technology. The problem was that when Charlie did the little finger thing, he wasn't holding his hand above this board long enough to allow the processor to realize there was something above and project the blood underneath. Whereas you had to hold your hand there and hold it there and keep it there, and then it would do the thing. It had the potential for being the best puzzle and the highlight of the entire run. And it was the absolute worst experience. That makes me, I'm certainly not going back. I mean, there's no way Charlie's ever going back. I don't think Brian has any reason to go back. It's not going to happen. I mean,
no. And we got really lucky with we got ushered off to the next room, and Charlie right away told the GM, I'm sorry, I know you're trying to do your job and you have to run a room, but I need to make a complaint. I need to talk to somebody. So he got in his little radio and pulled somebody, and somebody came right away and pulled Charlie aside. But he, our last GM, because this was the final room, was very sympathetic and, he didn't like, okay, well, whatever, I'm staying out of it. He was like, oh, well, I'm, sorry you had a bad experience. Let's see if we can get, make this better. And, here's what's happening. And, he was very cool and tried to give us at least a good, positive final room experience with what was happening. And he did. Like, I certainly came out feeling much better, but then we had to go and talk to the manager guy and I feel like kind of get the brush off.
He was so we did the last room, and I think our experience with the previous room had something to do with it. This is the first time in any true dungeon that had a combat in the last room that I've ever seen it finish, and we won. I think that might have had something to do with the what had happened previously, but
yeah, I would not.
There were 9 of us, and I think 3 of us survived by the end.
We did have a lot of dead bodies at the back of the room. A lot of
bodies. They were piling up.
It was getting so bad that I was casting damage.
Yeah. That was, but there were 2 things to fight. There was the cleric who was trying to raise the snake god, and then there was a snake god thing, and people were fighting on this side, fighting on that side. That was fun, and we were running around, casting spells and doing things, all the true dungeon stuff. So that was fun. And then it was over, and somehow we won. And then the apology started, and we, as you said, that the guy was waiting for out there, and I felt like he was there to listen to us, and then he turned and walked away.
Yeah,
that was about all that came of that.
It's like, well, I've doubled your treasure. I hope that's some compensation. I'm like, that's that cost you absolutely nothing, and assumes that we're ever coming back. And no.
Yeah. So that was really disappointing, and I that's twice I felt like I've helped drag Charlie to something that was end up being terrible. So I feel bad about that.
So that was pretty frustrating. We did get our spirits lifted a bit on the walk back, getting the text and confirming that we had made the finals for the ACG Open and that we would get our 9 a.m. slot for the next day, which was very important because we had 2 other tickets the next day, including the Tribbles Masters that we wanted to be able to also make. So that was nice. And then we kind of basically took our frustrations out on breeding Tribbles.
You took your frustrations out on breeding Tribbles. I had something else to do, something possibly more important to me and to Sean.
To you, sure. And to Sean.
So, as always, Saturday night at 10 o'clock for the last, I don't know how many years, has been the Austin Powers World Championship. And, maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago, when we would have just this table of 20 people sitting around. And I think last year we did it in pods of 6, and then we had, like Tribbles, we had the big table. There wasn't quite as many this year. There were still, I think, 7 of us. Well, we all sat down. We had it was you either get the good guys or the bad guys, and then you switch decks, and everyone plays again. And then the highest score of the 2 after the 2 rounds is declared the champion. And I know Jeremy plays every year. Sean plays every year. And there's 2 other folks that are there every time. I had a great time. Last year, I think I was close to coming in first, and it was one of those. All right, who are you going to king make? And I think Richard New chose somebody else, and I did not win. Jeremy Benedict has a habit of like the last 4 or 5 years has come in second place. He's always number 2, which is hilarious. This year, the first round, I got lucky and went out, so I had 100 points after playing the bad guys, and we switched over and played the good guys, and I racked up enough points such that I didn't go out, but I still had like 90 points, and 190 was enough for me to become the Austin Powers World Champion. So I came in first place to Jeremy Benedict's second place again. Yeah, I had a great time. So thanks to Sean for running that. In fact, all the cards that I have, I collected at that first time that I went, because one of the random raffles was, here's a complete set. So that's what I made my deck out of. I'm pretty much playing Highlander. So that was fun. It was great. Meanwhile, behind us, the Tribbles was going on. How many players were there for that?
We had 2 pods again. So I think we had 6 and a 5. Uh, we played. I was at the table with 5, and I got the extreme pleasure of getting to play with. I think it was Braxton
Yeah,
and his daughter Esri,
Ezra,
who
that's right.
came and played, and she played Charlie's or Brian's deck, and made just the best expressions every time somebody did something contrary to what she wanted. She did put her dad out by mistake once by reversing it back to him while he had out. She's like, no, I don't reverse. He's like, too late. And it was really funny and super adorable. They were a lot of fun to play with, and it was a really great way to just sit and kind of chill out and play some dribbles at the end of the day. Um, yeah, I had a great time. I think it definitely looked like there was another table at the other side, and I got the Charlie shuffled up all the tickets that were submitted for that and selected a random participant to get a playmat, and I got a Klingon Masters playmat.
Nice.
I also won my pod.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Very good.
but so I whether it was rando or victory, I'll take both. But after narrowly or oddly not giving up on my chance unexpectedly for one last year, I was pleased to have secured one now. So
Perfect.
that almost made the next day just like icing. I was like, okay, cool. I don't care if I win this now.
One of the guys who was there that night borrowed a deck from me, and I think he might have borrowed one the previous day because he had just learned to play, and
Yeah.
so he had a great time again. We saw him again the next morning for the Triples Masters, but there was a lot of people coming back the next day, which was great to see.
A lot of new players, and they kept coming back. It was good, but definitely exhausted after that. I almost skipped it because I had nausea. Just my head was swimming after getting home from the special the night before, and I didn't get to sleep until probably 3:30 or 4. So I was definitely ready to go and crash that and try to get some rest before our 9 a.m. appointment the next day.
That's right. We set our alarms, got a few hours of sleep, and then shuffled over to where we were supposed to be at 9 a.m. To play in the final. And since there were 2 time slots, it was like, well, we're not going to know if we did well enough when this is over. There's 2 groups going on at once, or were there three groups going on, and then there was going to be one team at later. So we did our best, and Herman and Richard New were there in their pod. They had made it to the finals as well, which is great because this is like their first year. So they said they'd definitely be back again next year to do it again. It was I don't want to say similar, but same decks. One more power, build what you got, and we had all written down our
Yeah,
decks from previous days, so we made our decks super quick. I think that helped us because we were never really pressed for time on all
yeah,
three adventures. We had a good idea what we were doing. We put our decks together quickly, and then we were off, and that let us strategically plan the last few turns as it got to the end and not be under that time clock, which I tell you, well, I think the first year I played, we were up against time every game. I don't think we ever
yeah.
finished an adventure. Maybe last year we finished and did pretty well, but this year it was I don't want to say it was not time was not an issue in any of our games.
Yeah, we definitely the first one I kept asking, and then it was like, no, we're doing fine, and then by the last day it was like, all right, yeah, because part of the scoring was number of closed locations and number of cards left in your deck. So even though for a corner the villain style scenario, you can avoid closing locations if you want by temp closing and just beating them up. Uh, it was for two more score worthy for us to go and take those out, even though we lost a point. Not lost a point, but you got a point for every blessing left in the blessings pile, but you got a 10-point bonus for closed location. So if we could do it quickly, that was worth the exchange. So not only did we go and close every location every time, but we also, okay, last location, villain is over here. let's dig out the healing. Let's get more cards back in your deck, get more cards back in your deck, so we can pad our score a little bit.
That
Now
was
let's
one
go
of the
fight the
things
villain.
in the previous two in the qualifier and the semi. There was a side quest that you can do to go dig for an item, and then you get it to use for the
Yeah,
rest of the game. In the final, if you had done those, you get them to use in the final. So it helped out that we had
yeah.
gone the extra mile because I don't know if I don't know if the anti undead was useful to Brian at all, but I think Charlie used the wisdom reroll at least once.
Yeah. Well, and not only were those worth points for acquiring them in those scenarios, but it turned out at the end they were worth additional points in the final scenario if you had them.
Really, I missed that.
Yes.
That's
So
awesome.
if you had taken the time to do those side quests, that it get paid off additionally in the long run. So I was a little weary of the last scenario when we started because it seemed like there was a great deal of luck involved because the villain was not in a fixed or in any of the locations to start with. It was in a fixed location that had yet to be built, and in order to find that location, find it, each time you closed somewhere, everybody could take a curse, and you could examine the top card of 3 decks, either location decks or character decks. And if all 3 cards were different adventure deck numbers, then the way to the final location would be revealed. It got built, the villain was in it, and then you could. But that seemed like a lot of pain that could pile up really fast because I remember last year our opponents in the final really got hosed because they just let their curses pile up too much and had no way of getting rid of them. And there didn't seem like a lot you could do about that, but it turns out there was, and we did a really, I felt, not to like toot our horns or anything, but we did a really good job of strategizing around that and saying, okay, well, I was able to scout 1 card from the top here, but we could just leave it here, and now we know what that 1 card is, and then we go over here and we scout another 2 cards, and then this top one is the same as that one, but we get rid of that, and then we leave the next one, so now we know what 2 cards are.
Yep.
So by the time we did it the second time,
I think we got it on the second try, right?
yeah, we were able to, okay, let's scout 1 unknown thing, and if it's the same as the ones we know, then we'll try 3 randos. But if it's different, then we'll have it, and we managed to get it that way. So
in addition to that, between games, the first game we were cursed a lot. The second game we were cursed a lot. By the time the third one was like, hey, we're going to put in all our anti-curse stuff. We're making our decks. We had a good idea. We had a good guess of what would be coming, and that really helped as well. We were able to clear out just because we had the cards, the foresight to put those in.
Yeah, I didn't have any other curse stuff, but I did swap out 1 ally for the last one. I was like, why would you ever use this? I'm like, okay, now I know. And it was recharge this ally to search the top 5 cards of your character deck and reorder them. I was like, all right, well, now I can go get my anti-curse ally and put that on top.
Yeah, or that would have been great if we had a problem finding a third number.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. We wrapped up pretty early. We cornered. We did the one thing to get extra points. We made that location disappear. We opened the villain. We closed everything else. Made our way over there. Burned it down. It was like the last card. We had 3 turns of getting ready, and then we fought the villain and defeated him and counted up our cards, and we had almost as many points as we did the first time. I think it was 196 or something like that.
Yeah, 190, something like that. 194, I think.
Yeah, 194. So we felt pretty good. I mean, we did as well as we did in the adventure that we got super lucky. So I felt like that's going to be tough to beat. And we kind of wrapped up and not knowing how anything went, right?
Yeah, there was nothing we could do. The other 2 groups were still playing. It was a little frustrating to see one of the other table GMs come over to see how we were doing, to compare notes. It's like, I don't think that's really relevant. I think you should just be, GMing your table and not, coaching them along or, telling them how many points they need to get to beat us in the middle of their game.
Yeah,
But there's nothing we could do about it. You know, we had time, and we finished in plenty of time. We thought it might have been close to get over to Tribbles Masters, but we actually had time to go to the floor first.
that's right. We did some walking around.
Yeah, did some walking around, picked up a couple of accessories that people wanted, some last minute shopping items, and went off to Tribbles Masters, which had 3 pods. We had so many people.
Did we pick up Pantone in that time?
No, that was the day before. That's a
Okay.
good point. In our wandering the day before, I had seen Pantone at Comic-Con at the Cryptozoic booth, and I was like, I want to play this. This looks awesome. We have to demo this at GenCon. And it's the simplest game, like so much so that I looked at the display and was like, I know how to play this. And it was pretty much exactly, it's a set of 15 color chips, you know, like paint chips, cards of different colors, and there's 4 copies of each, and a deck of random pop culture characters. And you draw a card or a handful of cards, and you can pick one, and you use the paint chips to arrange a tableau, like basically draw the character with those colors, and then your table gets to guess. And there are hints on the card, so if they don't get it without hints, then they have gradually from general to more specific hints. And I think we got at least 2 with no hints.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was pretty good. You had an incredible start with your an incredible Gandalf, which was amazing. You had the staff, which was the details were turn out what matter if you have enough cards to play accessories. And then he had this little gray dude in a little hat, and he's like, okay, I would be done, but I have to do one more thing. And he pulls out a stack of white, and he covers up all the gray squares with white squares.
I think that's
like,
cheating.
I know what it is.
I think that's cheating, but that was too funny to pass up.
That was amazing. I was already on this like staff, like a wizard, and then you did gray to white. That was awesome.
Yeah.
It's a totally, and then as you advance, you can do it gets harder by round. You can only use 1 card of each color, and then at the last round, you can only use 3 cards at all. So it forces you to really get creative, and I really had a good time. I picked it up right away. The designer was there, and he was looking over our shoulders. He's like, "Oh, that's really clever. Good job of that." And I like what you did here. And so it was neat. It was a really fun game. I think it'll be. You can do it in teams instead of individually, which makes it a big party game.
Yeah, so you can do it when you have 10 people or 15 people hanging around.
Yeah. So that was a good pickup. I'm glad you remembered that.
Yeah. After Tribbles, we went on to play, which was. I think a great way of ending the con, the real part of the con,
Absolutely.
the con floor. It was the jumbo size. I want to say life size, but that would be ridiculous.
Well, it was life. It was us sized.
Yeah,
they were almost people sized.
It was the giant King of Tokyo. So we're playing with these. The King of Tokyo is, you've got all these, lizard guy and alien dude and Godzilla and King Kong or whatever, and you're trying to basically destroy all the other ones and be the King of Tokyo as you move in, and you beat everybody up, and there's big dice you roll. Well, this was all the standees were at least 5 feet tall. The dice were a good maybe 8 inches cube, and we're all standing around this huge map, where one spot's Tokyo and one's the Bay of Tokyo, and then we're just tossing these dice in the air and they're bouncing all over the place. And I don't know that we were playing for anything. We didn't know when we walked up, but it was the 4 of us and some other lady who was having a great time. And it was just good fun. I mean,
it was a lot of fun. It was a slaughter.
Yeah, well, yes.
Thanks to somebody.
Maybe me.
But then Charlie knocked you off at the end.
Yeah, I softened everybody up, and then Charlie knocked me out.
But we finished so quickly. The guy was like, we were like, can we play again? The guy was like, if you want to keep score while I go do this other logistical stuff, you guys knock yourselves out. So we were like, awesome. Give me the whiteboard pen.
Yep. So we played again. It was just the four of us. There were kids walking up and standing next to, Godzilla and having their picture taken with this Godzilla looming over them, and it was great. We played another round. I think our second round lasted longer than the first round. We probably filled up the whole time slot. I think we were supposed to be there for a good 2 hours, and we were there for most of it.
Yeah,
But it was
definitely.
fun. They gave us some random prizes, little energy tokens to use in the game that looked like energy bolts, and a couple of promos. I got one of those. I think I brought my promo back. I'm gonna give it to Jesse, and that was fun. It was a great way to end the day.
And the con, that was it. We were basically done after that. I think somebody wanted to run in and get one more thing off the con floor, but we were basically. Oh, I think Charlie went back to the room to do Star Trek stuff. That's what
Yep, he went
happened.
to go back to get things packed up and get
Uh,
ready to go. I think I went and bought these
yeah.
Pro Fit sleeves. I got the side loading ones for the ACG card, so you can mark on the sleeve and not have the card slide around on the inside. Also got to pick up some dice that Charlie wanted, and in all of my shopping, my favorite thing of all was I bought a single magic card, this foil dragon's horde to go in my dragon deck because it's pretty awesome looking. Anyway, I had a good time. Walked around the floor a little bit more, saw a few more things. Uh, I got to go see. Oh, you know what? I don't know if I showed you the art that I got from the Something
Uh,
Positive guy.
oh no, no, I didn't even know you saw him. I didn't even know he was there.
Yeah. So I've been going last couple of years to go see this guy named Randy, and I give him some cash because I read his comic. I've been reading his comic forever, and I never follow his Patreon or do any donating. So I just give him some money, and it's like, hey, you want a comic? I'm like, oh, you gave me this comic last year. I'll sketch something for you. As I was walking up, he was talking about these Australians who had just come by or had come by earlier in the con, and he was talking to someone else who was already there. I kind of walked up, sidled up into the conversation, and apparently these Australians really hated koalas. So he asked, so he pulled out this drawing that he was doing, and if you've ever read Something Positive, you'll understand that there was a koala on the chopping block being cut into little pieces, and then little bits of sushi made up with little koala heads in them, because that's what was happening to the koalas. So every year, I I I have no idea what I want this guy to draw for me. So I said, well, how about the koalas we were just talking about? So he said, all right, and grabbed out a pen and sketched a koala head on a spit with a little caption that says, Dan, why? So I've got a totem. This is on my ACG binder, so I'll take that everywhere I go now. Whenever I play ACG, I've got a totem, a
Why?
good luck totem. Dan, why?
Oh my
Because
goodness.
yeah. So that was fun. That was great. That's always entertaining. uh, but that wrapped it up. I mean, we didn't even in the past. We're on the floor walking around. The con will end. The Gen Con will be over, and the floor will be over in 10 minutes. So get out. We left before any of that started happening. I think I heard the 30-minute mark,
Yeah.
and we were done,
Yeah, we're like,
exhausted.
let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go play stuff.
So
Actually, we went and ate and played stuff. That was a
that's
good
right.
choice because we had skipped lunch for Tribbles.
Skipped lunch for
Um,
Tribble, so it was time to go
so
eat again. We
back to the
wanted
slippery noodle.
That's right. We as we went back to the room, dropped our stuff off, and started heading back, and it was like swimming against the tide because everyone
Yeah.
was leaving the con floor and we were going in the opposite direction of everybody. But that meant that no one was going the way we were, and once again, the slippery noodle was mostly empty. It was
Yeah,
on.
we
It
took
was an odd time. It was like what 2 or 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock maybe. No, it must have been 4 o'clock,
no. It was 5 o'clock by the time we sat down and had food.
4:30, 5 o'clock. All right.
Almost 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was mostly empty.
but it's still it was pretty early. We got a whole room to ourselves. We
That's
took
right.
over
There
the
was a
game
little
room.
side game room with pinball machines and a couple
Yeah,
of TVs playing baseball, and uh,
amazing wings.
the wings were once again awesome. The wait staff was quite tolerant of us. Kept bringing us water, and we're like, "Can we just keep playing here?" And they're like, "Sure." So we just kept playing. We played a couple games of Star Realms. No, we didn't. What did we do? What were we
Hero
playing?
Realms
Hero Realms. That's right. Uh,
and
and
Pantone.
yeah, that was fun. We eventually decided. I think when we walked there, we decided we were gonna take a lift back, but we just marched back. It was not
Yeah, we
too
were there long
unpleasant.
enough.
Yeah. Uh, and then we went, and the Marriott had a bunch of tables just open for people to game on. They had a couple of ballrooms open, so we just sat down at a table and we played some more Star Realms for a few hours. And I think at around, was it nine,
Like
10 o'clock,
11.
11 o'clock? It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
it was
we've been in Indianapolis for days and we haven't gone to Steak and Shake yet, so let's go there.
one last Gen Con iconic thing to do. So yeah, I
Yeah,
went and grabbed shake, but then packed it in.
yeah. We went back and packed up, and you went to go visit your other friends for a little while.
Very, very shortly. We were all kind of wiped, but yeah, just some friends who don't get to see very often and hadn't seen. He had been working all con, and so just kind of stopped by and said hi. But yeah, and then it was time to pack up, especially for me because I had an idiotically early flight the next day. So pack up my stuff and get out of there. But we all made it home.
Yeah, I think. More gaming happened. So the three of us, me, Brian, and Charlie, took a lift over to the airport at around, I don't know, maybe 9 o'clock. We just kind of packed up and rolled out. We didn't have to be there until, I think my flight didn't board till like 11:50. So we checked our bags. That big open area right before you go into security, where the big food court is.
Yep,
More tables set up. Gamers, Gen Con, welcome to Indianapolis. Please continue your gaming here. So we sat down and played some more Star Realms.
and did.
We played another 2 rounds. We handily defeated the first boss and then narrowly defeated the second boss. We should try that machine cult one again because it was crazy. We probably did play it on hard mode, but that was fun. So after that, Charlie had to go off to go to his flight. I hung around with Brian for a few more minutes and then went off to my flight. Had a pretty easy flight back. Do you know if Charlie ever made it home?
I don't. He did. I know he got delayed, and then he had to take the long.
The answer is no.
Oh no! Charlie is apparently listening to us
And still,
because
still on the road.
he is still on the road. He is on the road listening to the show right now.
Yeah. So
That's
sorry, Charlie.
hilarious.
Still hasn't made it back yet. That's a long day, man. We
Oh
got up
yeah,
early on,
jeez, yeah.
and not our time zone.
No,
So
it's like 2 o'clock East Coast time. Jeez. All right.
yeah,
Well, man, I hope you eventually make it home safe and are at least comfortable wherever you are waiting that out. But that was our Gen Con. And all in all, success. World champions of the world again. Yeah.
I pulled in 2 championships. I got the Austin Powers. I got the ACG. We won the box. That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Won numerous triples or pods. We kind of skipped over triples masters.
That's
I
fine.
did not do well enough to make the final round. And then I destroyed the last table, which was awesome. I had a great time. So, king of the scrubs, whatever. But that was great. So I had a great time. Man,
the winner was somebody who had learned to play that weekend
and was using my 5x5 bonus deck and just had a blast. So that's great. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, great con all around. Finally made it home, and it's gonna be a long day at work tomorrow. So
yeah,
it's probably a good place to end, right?
Yeah. Well, that's been 2 hours of Gen Con, so we should probably not delve into Comic Con at this point. But we should do at least one point. I would like to do. They did have a very cool thing that I had to pick up, and I had to get 2 copies. So I've got one here, and you've got one there. I did not make it into the Star Trek. Go ahead and open it. I did not make it into the Star Trek Discovery panel, but I did make it to the QMX booth, and they had these black badge Section 31 chevron pins,
Awesome.
Special Starfleet. And I was like, I think that's a requirement. That's a required purchase.
Awesome. Section 31 badge. Perfect.
So
That's fantastic. Now I have something to wear with my Section 31 class.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Well, this
So,
we'll have to wear these for every show from now on.
I've had mine sitting here waiting next to my computer, so I would remember the next time we recorded to talk about that. So that'll be my whole Comic-Con report. That's it.
Awesome. All right,
Section 31 black badges. But that's way more the intelligence that I'm sure you needed for one show. That's all we have this week. Thank you to everybody who ran into us at GenCon. It was great to see all of our players that we've got to see over the years and play with you guys, even just hang out with you guys. Thank you to Charlie and Brian and Dan for putting up with all of my shit as we planned for GenCon. It was a great weekend. So always a great time. In the meantime, I am Sir Rogue.
And I'm Sir Dan.
And I will remind you all to expand your power in the universe.
And yeah, I'll draw it in.